I love it. So then that moves us into how we distribute that content. You had actually touched on this back when at the beginning of this session, but content isn't single use. I think that that is really the point that we are trying to drive home, is that just because you have a piece of content and it fulfilled the need at the time doesn't mean that it doesn't have the legs to serve you in other ways. So I think that, what I want to talk about with you on this slide is, how long do you usually see content and channel mixes like having longevity for? Like what kind of impact do they have when it comes to thinking about internal channels, external channels? Like, I would love to get your thoughts on impact and scale of that.
Yeah, we're really fortunate in the sense that most things that we do don't tend to have a very short shelf life. Even our annual report, you would think that that's a static moment in time, but it's very relevant for the duration of the year. We've created companion kind of interactive derivatives, which we'll touch on in a little bit, of creating a kind of tool variant of the static snapshot of data. But going back to webinars, even the ability to flip from a live event to a webinar and converting that into an on-demand asset that does have perennial, it depends, but it could be evergreen, but it could most certainly support your needs throughout the duration of the year, is really simple. I think the times where it doesn't, when you kind of, as a marketer, painted yourself into a corner because you falsely created a shelf life by perhaps the cover graphic or the creative that you use, or even the title of the asset. Mm-hmm. If it's, I don't know, a few of the analyst groups, right? They're very popular for doing quarterly statements on things. Well, guess what? That only lasts about a quarter, the next quarter, and then you need to ignore that asset. You can't reuse material there, or it looks dated and it looks poor upon your brand. So don't do those types of things, but just be mindful, I think, about what you're projecting in the marketplace, and the bit more open-minded you are in how you're positioning it, the greater shelf life it'll have.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, thinking about channels and how you use the content within those channels, like you can extend the shelf life of content that way too, not just in, using it in one-to-one outreach, but also thinking about like nurture programs or existing marketing drips. Like, how do you, think about putting that content, in a drip that lasts, 3 months, half the year. But then also thinking about like Wake the Dead campaigns where, those people probably haven't seen your content before. So what content is in your back pocket that you can easily use and, has a really strong message that you feel does a good job of positioning. So I think that there are other ways. And then you can also think about like content hubs too, where that content, where you make it always available for people. They can binge it whenever they want. And you make that as kind of, a very long-lasting library of different resources based around topics and themes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that gets to, even if there is some dated material in there, it speaks to the depth and breadth of your commitment as a brand to creating content to educate your prospects, versus there's nothing worse than going to a website where you thought that they were subject matter experts in whatever they do, and there's like 3 things for you to engage with. They might be great, but it doesn't demonstrate the breadth, right? Or depth. It's just there's a couple things here, and then they've moved on to the next batch, and those disappear. That the resource library or content hub is critical, I think, for amassing that perception.
Yeah, I think ultimately, what I'm trying to get at with you here is like, when it comes to how you distribute content, that second to repurposing it in general is a great way to scale your impact of your content, because you are enabling more people to see it. You're enabling more frequency to see it. And hopefully that content is playing a larger role than it would otherwise as just being the offer of the month.
Absolutely.